Thank you. So good afternoon, everybody. I know it's sort of digestion time, so I think attention might be a bit lower, but I'll try to make it as lively as I can. So I'm Amin Belhaj. I'm actually based in London, and I work for BNP Paribas. And what I wanted to talk to you about today is a work that I've been doing with a few colleagues and other financial institutions and fintechs about how can technology and digital help us move the trillions. So title is How Can Fintech Help to Shift the Trillions? This was a work that we've done and we're continuing to do. It's a never-ending venture. But I try to organize it to give you a sort of synthetic view of where we see the impact of digital. So first thing is we are in a world in transition, and there are two key drivers to this transition. And obviously the first one we're all here for is the energy transition and climate change. The second one is the digital revolution. And those two key changes are going to affect every aspect of our life and bring massive disruptive impacts to the way we conduct our business and to the financial system. So when looking at the sustainability challenge, the Paris Agreement has made it clear that financial systems have a key role to play in achieving a decarbonized world. And beyond climate change, there is a role to be played by the financial system to enable the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. And broadly speaking, this could be achieved in two main ways. First, by embedding ESG factors more systematically in the core financial decision-making process, and we heard in the main speech this morning how important that is. And second, by enabling capital flows to flow more to the green projects. In other words, ensuring financing is going where it is needed in priority. And that's particularly in green infrastructure and emerging markets. So when looking at those two specific issues of mainstreaming sustainability in finance and to enabling capital to flow towards green projects, we have come across a number of innovations leveraging a combination of new financial technologies such as blockchain technology, peer-to-peer lending platform, Roboadvisors, and other technologies such as Internet of Things and artificial intelligence that could be leveraged. So I would like to run you through a few examples of these to make it more concrete, bearing in mind that they are still at a level of proof of concept, and not many have matured yet into industrialized practical solutions. So first, embedding sustainability in global finance. One of the first application is about enhancing ESG data quality and relying on big data and artificial intelligence, artificial imagery to enhance this data quality. And I would first start by giving you the result of a survey conducted recently by Natixis, which says that globally 61% of institutional investors integrate ESG factors in their fundamental processes, and that's up from 52% just a year ago. So this is a sharp increase, and it's building momentum very fast. But at the same time, one of the great difficulties that investors are facing is the poor quality of ESG data and availability of this data from companies and on assets. So the aggregation and updating of data is often outsourced to specialized firms. And what we have seen is that most of these ESG data providers are principally relying on corporate reported data. But such information just gives you an information which is a snapshot at a particular point in time, and it's defined by the firm's reporting cycles. So typically, it's historical data, and these performance indicators are looking backwards instead of forward. Also, typically there is a lack of granularity in the data for these impact indicators to enable a very accurate analysis of exposure. So the result is that investors are not provided with a clear indication of how well the company is prepared to address future climate change, both transition and physical risks, and other sustainability issues. So we came across, in the course of our exploration, a couple of fintech solutions that are developing interesting solutions to address this problem in different ways. I will tell them what they are. Obviously, there are certainly many others. We are only coming across a few, and we're not pretending that we have surveyed the whole universe, but I think they're interesting in what they offer. So what they offer are solutions to assess portfolio exposure to climate risk, both physical and transition. We have, for instance, a 2-degree initiative investing, focusing on transition risk, and 427, a firm called 427, focusing on physical risk, and Carbon Delta, which is doing both transition and physical risk. All three are examples of organizations developing these types of solutions. You also have artificial intelligence fintechs, which offer solutions that enable to bypass the company's self-reported information through browsing information on the web, typically, and through natural language processing. So this involves browsing thousands of online sources, news, websites, NGOs, websites, etc., on a real-time basis to extract sustainable information on thousands of companies. A downside of this approach could be that it could be reliant on fickle online sentiment, but we've asked those companies how they do this, and they have ways to filter this information, and they build artificial intelligence to also filter this. So examples of those solutions are provided by companies called True Value Labs and Arabesque, for instance. Also, you have satellite-based fintechs that develop solutions to extract sustainability performance data directly from satellite imagery. They integrate new detection technologies to allow measure carbon emissions at the physical asset level. So I think maybe I need to speak a bit louder, because can you hear me well? Yep, okay. So such satellites would enable measuring on a real-time basis the emissions associated with any physical assets around the world, power plants, etc. And if this technology delivers on its promises, it would really be a breakthrough. This is because the amount of companies' emissions disclosure could markedly decrease, since measurements would take place directly at the most granular level, and linkage of emissions to companies could be automated. And there are already some fintechs performing that risk of linking the company ownership to physical assets. So imagine physical assets, emissions measured through satellite imagery or captors, and then the link to who are the companies who are operating those assets. So the technology suite for such a solution is not mature yet, but some organizations are making strides in this field, and there is work done at the moment by Oxford University on this very topic. So that was an example. Don't hesitate if I'm too slow to that me.
I will not. Issue
2, mobilizing retail savings for more sustainable economy, and the Roboadvisor technology. So the H-leg, estimates that an additional 177 billion euros of annual investments between 2021 and 2030 are needed for the EU to meet its 2030 greenhouse target. In 2015, over 40% of financial assets are held by European households, representing 34 trillion euro, and about 25% is invested in equity and fund, and 40% in insurance and pension. So why is that important? It's because as a result, integrating ESG factors into investment products for retail investors could play a key role in mainstreaming ESG in global finance. So Natixis, again, in a research last year, finds that over 2/3 of retail investors in 22 countries consider non-financial factors in their investment decisions to be important. But when we look at pension investments, I'm happy that it's very funny. Wow. Most pension savers are blind as to where their pension is being invested, and whether it's invested in companies with a strong or a bad ESG performance. Generally, retail investors are not being asked what their extra financial preferences are when it comes to decide where to invest. So the work that we've done with the Banking Environment Initiative last year with Cambridge Institute for Sustainability Leadership has developed a proof of concept, which is just about ready now, whereby pension savers could, through the use of an app, identify where their pensions are currently invested and what is the ESG performance of those investments. So the idea there was, we see the trend of the millennials really much more interested into how their investments and their pension will be invested. If we give them through digital services direct information on the impact of the investment, they could in turn influence how the investments are made. It's back to the consumer elements. So it's not regulation, it's consumer, but it's enabled by digital technology. So enabling capital flow to green projects is another dimension of this topic. One issue, for instance, is how to reduce transactions barriers for issuing and investing in green debt and increase trust. So there could be solutions using blockchain and the Internet of Things to make that trust more present there. Currently, the green bond market is not big enough to meet investor high demand for green assets. And this is due to several challenges faced by the various actors in this market. And for instance, on the issuer side, it was mentioned this morning, the extra cost related to reporting requirements and additional all the criteria that need to be met. On the investor side, the limited access to quality, quantitative, clearly well presented of information. And for project owners, the difficulty to match their projects with the available financing. So Stockholm actually has an initiative called the Green Asset Wallets, and we have spoke with them too. And they have a project that consists in a platform for sharing and accessing information on green projects and their impact. So there again, it's a project. It's not yet actually working. It's at the proof of concept level. But their aim is to contribute to improve transparency and consequently increase the trust in the flow of and improve the flow of capital, of private capital that goes into green projects in emerging markets. And this technology would be built on two main elements. One, which is for validation and impact reporting, and the other, which is the impact reporting element. So we have also been in a discussion with a key client suggesting to develop a similar blockchain platform leveraging in-house technology where such a platform would help ensure transparency and automate impact reporting. As we don't have too much time, I don't go into too much details because I think we have to leave some time for questions. I'm almost done, so bear with me. Second issue is how we can facilitate investments in green decentralized energy. And there again, fintech solution based on blockchain and peer-to-peer platform marketplace. So what's the problem there? At the global level, it is challenging for traditional investors to support decentralized renewable energy generation, in particular solar, at scale. Access to capital can therefore be a barrier to localized producers. The fintech solution could help address this issue by using dedicated clear energy coin or token linked to the production of renewable energy and stored on a blockchain. This would create the conditions to more directly connect decentralized energy generation. So there again, we came across the WePower platform. This platform exists today. It was developed in Lithuania. And with this platform, renewable energy generation facility project developers can raise capital by selling part of their future energy production directly to the energy consumers or investors upfront. So this is done in the form of smart energy contracts. These contracts represent the amount of energy that the power plant is planning to produce in the future and how that energy is distributed between the investors. They can be used to offset energy bills or traded on the marketplace or even sold in the energy wholesale market. So that concludes with my example. And as a conclusion, what I would tell you is that we are just scratching the surface of what technology can do and the many ways fintechs could be leveraged. Shifting trillions will obviously require a global effort leveraging many solutions, some with the potential of being very disruptive for the financial industry. And I'm thinking in particular to the information to the retail and investors and how that could really transform the way asset management and managing pensions could be affected. In parallel, the increasing push for ESG disclosure by regulation is expected to keep the demand for better quality data. The European Union High-Level Expert Group recommended the creation of taxonomy to identify what is green and what is not. And the TCFD task force has also made recommendation in terms of climate disclosure, which should be meaningful. This should in turn keep the development of fintech solutions to source better data and interpret it in a meaningful way. So clearly for us, the banks, it is important to understand these current changes and be mindful of the new signals that we're getting so we can make sure we can reposition our business models in the best way for success for both of us and a sustainable future economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Amin. Before I jump in, because I have a lot of questions, I'm excited about this one.
I can sit down.
I want to see if there's anyone else in the audience who has any questions or has anything for Amin. Yeah, let's start with this gentleman over here.
Hi there, thanks for the talk.
Yes.
So you spoke about Roboadvisors, and we know that passive investment strategies are growing and have been growing for many years. How do you create change when you're now a passive investor as opposed to actively influencing how these companies are managed?
How do we create change?
As an investor, how do you bring about the change you want in the companies you're invested in?
So I think the idea there is to give the investors a possibility to give its criteria beforehand. So an individual investor could say, I don't want to invest in tobacco, or I don't want to invest in such and such sector. So I'm already giving my choices upfront, and that's included in the Robo-advisor algorithm to exclude it by construction.
I have a similar question. I've been wrong before, so you have to pardon me if I'm wrong again. Also, I should note that we promised you a dynamic pitching environment. I think you got the fullest, most dynamic pitching experience of anyone yet today. So, but my question, I've been, like I said, I could be getting this wrong, but I understand that like the volume of retail investment is actually decreasing over time. Is that the case? Am I mistaken in that? Yeah.
No, I think what we are seeing in the surveys is that the amount of retail investment which is thinking ESG factors are important is constantly increasing. Now, the overall amount of retail investment decreasing, I can't tell you.
So that's my question, because you mentioned on the survey that 26% take non-financial factors into consideration in their investment. And I think about like my Uncle George back home in Kansas, who's like, I take in non-financial. It's like if my friend Larry down the street tells me to invest in a company, I'm going to do it. That's a non-financial factor, right? So I guess what I think is interesting from what the fintech solutions are is it brings in specifically the ESG data that helps to give them the information so that they can know they're using good social and environmental issues and information, not what Larry down the street is saying. But I think my question is building on what this gentleman was asking, which is, how do you really affect change up at the C-suite level? I mean, all of the Uncle Georges and Larrys of the world really going to pay attention to this through their passive investment in their pension portfolio to really make a difference in how banks like yours at the highest level decide to channel their investments.
Yeah, so
that was a lot. I hope it makes sense.
It does make sense. Funnily enough, I have a little bit of the opposite challenge. Like we have a very clear, from the top level, from the CEO level, we have a very clear focus on this. The question is more how we accelerate that trend. And for me, one thing which I think is interesting is to try to make it more concrete for the individual investors. And I don't think we're going to solve this with a very general everything is solved for everyone type of approach, but more by giving the individual investors things that they care about, themes that they care about. It could be, for instance, air pollution. How do you, as an inhabitant of a big city, are affected by industries which affect negatively air pollution? So you could have a criteria of encouraging investments in industries that are improving the air pollution in the city, and that could have many applications. It could have a benefit, for instance, even for the value of the real estate in the city. Because you can think, the value of a real estate in the city could be decreased over time if air pollution was becoming such a problem. People would have to start to go, and that's so. I think there is a lot of innovation possible, but I think it will be proofs of concept, and then they will mushroom, and over time, with the taxonomy and the regulatory effort on the other side, we'll have a way to make sense of it in a much more holistic way.
Well, that makes sense too. But one of the things you said we need to accelerate. Is it that we just let the proofs of concept run their course and see how they work, and the winners will rise to the top? Or is there something that I can do in my institution as a member of the World Bank, or someone else here who is in a multilateral initiative or in a bilateral government? What can we do to work with you as the private sector to accelerate these solutions?
No, I
if anything. Or do we just let the market take care of it?
No. I think we as financial institutions have ability to generate those new ideas and propose them. Because it's two ways. It could come directly from the public saying, I want to see this, but very often we'll find that the public is not informed enough. So I think it's our responsibility to really come with innovative ideas and push them, and also measure. And that's one thing we're doing at BNP Paribas at the moment, is establish the KPIs to measure and actually judge the performance of our own staff by giving them targets of certain percentage of the business that they must do linked to the sustainability agenda.
No, that makes sense, and I think just the fact that you're here pitching and participating in I4C speaks volumes about that, and so I think we appreciate that partnership and we'll continue it. Do you see application of fintech solutions that could help drive sustainability in other key areas of the economy?
You mean outside of the financial sector?
Yes.
Oh, they are.
Where are there the overlaps, and how can we get more people interested and crowd other folks in?
I mean, I just to give you an example that I had heard last year, because we've been very involved in a project called the Tropical Landscape Finance Facility in Southeast Asia, and in Indonesia in particular. And we worked with ICRAF, which is, I don't know the initial, but it's linked to agriculture and forestry. And there was a very interesting application. It's not at all financial, but very practical, outside of the pure financial. It's this idea that through satellite imagery, you can take pictures of the surface of the Earth in certain areas, and analyzing the wavelength reflection gives you, with a very high degree of correlation, an excellent idea of the carbon content of the soil, which then enables you to select the best crop for that particular soil. Now, in Africa, in some countries, a lot of the problem is that the farmers do not have the information and will try crops that are not optimal for this particular soil. So they are looking at developing a solution with very cheap mobile phones with geolocalization, accessing the data, saying, okay, you are positioned
standing
in my field.
This is what I should plant right here. What is the best crop
for my field?
Yeah.
So very practical.
Yeah.
Not a financial system innovation, but
something that bleeds over, and that would be of interest also, as we talked about the overlap between the fintech and the financial sector, but also MDBs like ourselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Great. We are out of time, Amin, but thank you very much for joining us. I think there's a lot of opportunities and possibilities for us in as we green the financial sector together.
I think really it's a very exciting topic. I think it's also one thing we did not mention, but in terms of talent attraction, attracting people at the frontier between this new technology and the sustainability agenda is actually an important challenge for us financial institutions. We want some of them, at least, to join our institutions rather than Silicon Valley, which today Facebooks and others are very attractive to them. And I think there is really a way for the young generation to actually do good within those financial institutions.
Great. Thank you, Amin, for joining us. We'll transition to the next pitch now. Thanks.
Thank you.